Hi, grade 9. It's me again. It's term 2. I hope you've all had a good restful holiday. I hope you haven't watched too many Netflix movies. I hope you're raring to go ahead. Now, if you remember last term, during lockdown, we finished off the section on digestion and nutrition. And before that, we did the section on water and diffusion and osmosis. Now, everything that you do in term 2 follows that theme. So we learned, for example, that in nutrition, or from the digestive system, glucose diffuses from the small intestine and into the blood, and then it gets taken to the cells. So now we're going to start linking it up to other systems. Okay, so I'm holding in my hand here a pair of lungs, a model that I fetched from my lab, because that's what we're going to be looking at this term. We're going to look at the structure and the function of the respiratory system, and we're going to figure out what the lungs are all about and how the cells in our body need oxygen all of the time because we need to break down glucose to release energy. So it's linking all of that up. And then obviously, there's lots of blood vessels here, so we're going to link it up to the circulatory system as well. And that section we will complete after this section. Now, in your workbooks, okay, I'm not sure if you can see this, but it starts on page 50. And I did note a little error here. It says the diagram below. Well, the diagram isn't below, the diagram is next door. And my PowerPoint is based on the diagrams that are in this workbook. So I haven't got lots of information, but I will be explaining as I go along. And you need to please make sure that you understand everything that's here. And we will have ASP. And please keep in contact via email. And always check Google Classroom because that's where the detail will be about what you need to do each lesson. Okay, so starting on page 50, we're now going to have a look at my PowerPoint. All right, so let's have a look here. Come on. Okay, it's opened. All right, so we're looking at gases exchange. In other words, how gases move across, how they move from high to low concentration. Okay, and the respiratory system plays a role in that. So this diagram that I've just told you about on page 50 shows how systems work together. Okay, so here we're talking about the circulatory system and the respiratory system, the lungs. So if you look here, when you breathe in air, it's going to be oxygen rich. Oxygen, yeah, contains more oxygen. All right. Doesn't mean there isn't CO2 because there's CO2 and all other gases around me here. I'm not just breathing in oxygen, I'm breathing in air, but it will have more oxygen. Okay? So you breathe it in, it goes into your lungs, and we're going to figure out how those lungs are structured in order for them to take the oxygen from the air and move it across into your blood. So oxygen moves from high concentration in the lungs to the blood, and then the blood vessels transport that oxygen around the body to every single cell. The oxygen moves from high concentration in the blood and into the cell. Now, we just learned about the digestive system. So we know that if you ate a whole packet of chips for lunch today, that you've eaten starch, and that starch will get broken down into glucose, and the glucose will move from your small intestine. It will diffuse from the region of high concentration in the small intestine and into the blood vessels, a region of low glucose concentration. So not only will oxygen be taken to every single cell, but glucose as well. And we know what happens then, don't we? Because inside our cells, there are mitochondria. And those mitochondria help to break down glucose using oxygen to release, yes, energy. Okay, and that energy can be used by the cells to do everything that they need. For example, a muscle. The muscle cells are going to contract and relax when you go outside and have a little run, I hope. All right, so now there will be energy inside the cells. The cells can do their job, they can work, okay? They can divide, they can contract and relax, they can make enzymes and proteins, they can do whatever they need to do. And during the process of cellular respiration, we know that waste products are so water, and the cells get rid of excess water, it goes into the blood, and then your kidneys get rid of excess water and it becomes part of the urine. I mean, you even breathe a little bit of water vapor out when you exhale. But that's not all the water that's coming from the cells into cellular respiration. It just happens to be in the respiratory tube at this particular time. Okay, so carbon dioxide moves from a medium of high concentration in every single cell, tips of your toes, fingers, every single cell in every single organ, and it moves into the blood. And then it gets transported back to the lungs, and CO2 then moves from high concentration in the blood to the little air sacs in the lungs, and then you exhale, you breathe out air rich in carbon dioxide. So now we can see how the gaseous exchange system, the working of the lungs, the respiratory system, is very closely linked to the circulatory system so that the cells can get what they need and what they need to get rid of. So this is a very important diagram, and something you really need to understand. And you must please also watch the videos that I've uploaded, the short videos. I know they sometimes have big words, but please don't get that confused. You only need to know what's in the word. All right. So on page 50, it then gives you definitions. All right. So everybody, well, people confuse this. I sometimes confuse it. You mustn't confuse these definitions. Okay. Be very clear about what you are talking about. All right. So the first term is breathing. So breathing in and breathing out. We call that inhalation and exhalation. That's simply taking the air with oxygen into the lungs and breathing out air with carbon dioxide. That's all. All right. But now that oxygen has to get from the lungs. So inside the lungs, there are millions of air sacs. And those air sacs are called alveoli, and they're very close to blood capillaries. Okay. So that's where gaseous exchange occurs. The oxygen diffuses into the blood, and at the same time, carbon dioxide diffuses from the blood, coming back from the body into the air sacs, and you exhale it, you breathe it out. So it's a swapping of gas, okay? Oxygen into the blood, CO2 out of the blood and into the air sacs. That's exactly what it is. All right, so that happens in the lungs. Then the oxygen-rich blood is transported around the body by the, well, these should be red. Those are the red blood cells. So when they are carrying oxygen, they will be oxygenated red blood cells, and the oxygen will then move from a region of high concentration in those blood cells to low concentration in the cells, and then oxygen is used and CO2 is produced, and that diffuses from the cells to the blood. The deoxygenated blood goes back to the lungs. Now, in diagrams, they always use red and blue. Your blood is never blue. So even though I like this diagram, your blood cells are never blue. In fact, if I'm looking here now, I actually have two things that I can use. So this would be, this is a candle, all right? That's like a dark, deep burgundy color. And if I look at my little straw over here, that's a bright red color. So that's the, well, part of it. That's the difference between oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. The candle is a dark, deep burgundy color, dark red. All right. I actually have this as well. My lamp, that's a darker red than the straw. So that's deoxygenated blood. It has more carbon dioxide. It still has some oxygen, but oxygenated blood, like the straw, bright red, has much more oxygen than CO2. Okay. So now we've explained how gaseous exchange occurs. So it occurs between the lungs and the blood and back, and then it also occurs at the cellular level. This oxygen moves from little blood capillaries into the cells, CO2 is made, and that diffuses in the opposite direction back into the blood. So there's two places where gaseous exchange occurs. All right, so then the third little diagram over here, that is a cell. So that cell needs to make energy. So as I've explained before, oxygen, well, first of all, glucose is already inside the cell. It comes from your intestine, traveled in the blood, it diffuses into the cells. So oxygen moves from the blood and into the cells. All right, so now both of those molecules are inside the cells, and they are mitochondria, and that glucose is broken down using oxygen. In fact, the hydrogens are broken off, the hydrogen atoms, and when they are broken off, energy is released. Okay, it's like pulling that little thing inside a Christmas cracker and it goes bah. Okay, so when the glucose molecule is broken down using oxygen, energy is released, and then carbon dioxide will be produced, and that will then pass from the cells and back into the blood. So that's cellular respiration. The breathing is the in and the out. Okay, the inhalation and the exhalation. Gases exchange is the movement of carbon dioxide in different directions in the lungs and at the cells of your body. Okay, cellular respiration is the chemical process that happens in every single cell of your body in order to break glucose down to release energy. So oxygen is used and carbon dioxide is produced. So please do not get confused between these two definitions. Now, the reason why I had a straw here, okay, so we can, maybe some of you have seen, but when we exhale, the air contains more carbon dioxide and some oxygen and helium and hydrogen and water vapor, etc. So what I've got in this little test tube is some clear lime water, and there's my straw, and all I'm going to do is exhale into the clear lime water. Oh goodness! Okay, a little bit more. Okay, mental note to self, cover the top of the test tube before you do it. And I have a wet table, a wet book, and yeah, anyway. All right, so there you can see now. All right, in fact, if I get some lime water that haven't been exhaled into, get it out. And I'm going to pour that in the glass. Oh, there you can see the difference. Here in the glass is the clear lime water, and there is the lime water that I've exhaled into. So the carbon dioxide actually it combines. This is calcium carbonate in water, and it actually combines with a molecule, and it forms a new precipitate. Okay, and then it goes cloudy because now the molecules are bigger. All right, but you don't need to know that. So clear lime water and milky lime water is the way that we test for the presence of carbon dioxide. Okay, now if you look on page 51, I want you to please fill that in. It says, explain how the following simple experiment is used to show that the air you exhale contains carbon dioxide. Watch this again, and I'm sure you know it. You can write the answer. Okay, at the bottom of page 51, there's also a question. It says, write down the chemical equation for the process of cellular respiration. So what happens inside the cell over here? All right, so let's just see if we can do this. I want to annotate. Okay, let's just try and write it down. So what happens during cellular respiration? Glucose is broken down using oxygen. Okay, then pretend I've got an arrow over here. So that energy, now that energy is called ATP. Energy is produced. All right, bigger and long. Okay, energy is produced, and the waste product, so carbon dioxide, and the other one is water. Okay, and water. All right, so that's what happens during cellular respiration. Glucose is broken down using oxygen. You know, if you leave a piece of metal outside in the rain and there's oxygen, it's going to rust. Okay, so we're not rusting our glucose molecules, but it is being oxidized, okay, which means that it's being broken down. And that's exactly what happens to metal. Oxygen combines with it and it changes into another precipitate, which I'm sure you're going to learn in science. All right, so energy ATP is made, the cell can do work, and then carbon dioxide is released, and we exhale that, and then water is made as well. And our cells will get rid of excess water, it will travel into the blood. We breathe a little bit of water vapor out when you exhale. That's why if you breathe in a mirror, it's going to be a little bit like steam on the mirror. And then when you breathe out carbon dioxide, you saw how the lime water turns milky. All right, so now, okay, we are going to look at the different parts of the respiratory system. Okay, so now here's a nice diagram to show the different parts, and you're going to watch the video as well. Okay, and you've got a diagram on page 52 as well. There's a nice summary diagram. I'm not going to try and explain all of that now. But if you look here, think about the different organs in your body. Okay, so these are our nostrils, the openings, and then you've got the nasal cavity inside here, the nostrils, nasal cavity. And then there's like these channels through which the air passes through. So those are the nasal passages over there. And there's little bones that the air passes through, like through a turbine. And then the air that you inhale goes down the back of your throat, but you can obviously also breathe through your mouth. All right? And if you remember from the nutrition section, okay, there are two tubes. So in the front over here, the one that feels like a creepy crawly part, that is the trachea. But behind the trachea is the, so there's the candle again. So there's the trachea in the front. That's the creepy crawly part because it's got cartilage rings. And behind the trachea is the esophagus, and that's the food tube. That's where the bolus of food is going to pass down by peristalsis. All right, so here you can see at the top of the trachea, there's your voice box. So if you put your hand over here and I'm talking away and I can feel my larynx or my voice box vibrating. But if I swallow air, that air needs to go down through my throat and then into the front tube over here. And the food has to go down the back tube, down the esophagus. So I will show you other pictures, but there's a little flap. Okay, so in fact, let's use the test tube. So that's your trachea. The opening at the top of the trachea, that is called the glottis. So the air must go from your throat down through that glottis opening and into the trachea, the air tube, and into your lungs. So at the top of the trachea, there is a little flap, and that flap closes off when you swallow food. So that flap is called the epiglottis. It's this little part over here, and it's made of ligaments and tissues and bits of cartilage, and it's going to close off the top of the glottis so that food goes down the esophagus and not into your trachea. But obviously, if you choke, or if you're laughing or running and you're eating at the same time or talking too much, then that glottis doesn't close properly, and now the food goes down the trachea. You try and cough it out first, or someone can give you back slaps, or if the person's going blue in the face and they really, the first aid is the universal sign for someone's choking. If they're doing that, then you know that something large is blocked in the tracheal opening, and that's when you do the hind leg maneuver. Okay, I'm going to show that now. Okay, so the trachea in the front over here, and it's got C-shaped rings of cartilage to protect it, that it doesn't collapse. And all right, so they are C-shaped rings of cartilage. They're not totally round. All right, let's try and do like that. So basically, at the back here, there's an opening. All right, the C-shaped ring of cartilage doesn't go all the way around. This. Okay, so there's the trachea, there's the C-shaped ring. So it's very easy for the esophagus to expand as the food passes down. Okay. All right, so let's look at the other labels for now. Right, the oral cavity, that's just the mouth cavity. There's the pharynx or throat, which you already know. There's the breathe, or sometimes called the windpipe, that's the trachea. There's the larynx, there's a whole bunch of cartilages, which I'll show you later. And then obviously your lungs are in your chest cavity, and your chest cavity is protected by your rib cage. So the yellow parts here, those are the sections through the ribs, and the red in between are the rib muscles. They will enable the rib cage to move in and out. We'll talk about that later. And you can see here the rib muscle. The trachea divides into two smaller branches, one going into each lung, and then they divide again. They divide more and more and more. So each tube here is called a bronchus. Don't worry about timing. There's one bronchus taking air into the left lung. Remember, you're looking at the person from the front. So even though I'm looking at the screen and it looks like this part is on the right of the screen, it's actually the left side of the person. Here's the right lung. And the right lung has 3 lobes, and there's the bronchus going in, and the left lung has 2 lobes, 1, 2, not perfectly symmetrical, and the heart sits in the middle over here, and it points slightly to the left. We'll get to that later. And the other things, you know, you need an enclosed cavity, and it's got to be sealed off from your digestive organs. So at the bottom over here is the diaphragm. Now the diaphragm is not a sheath of muscle like they show over here. It's actually a ring of muscle. If you think of a trampoline, okay, it's like that black part that you jump on. All right, so there's a ring of muscle, and then you've got that rubbery part that you jump on. That rubbery part is connective tissue. So the diaphragm, how can I do this? Okay, the diaphragm is dome shaped. You can see on the diagram over here, it expands upwards, but when that ring of muscle contracts, the dome shape flattens. So now it's going to make more space for your lungs to inflate. All right? And then when you breathe out, the diaphragm moves back up again, it relaxes and it pushes against the lungs, and you breathe out. So that's the main structure of the respiratory system. Okay, and on page 2, you can see there's a nice summary. It tells you all about the nose. So inside your nose, not the hairs at the beginning here, but in those nasal cavities, those air passages, the tissue lining those, there's lots of tiny little hairs, and they're called cilia, and they help to move the dust and everything out. So it's to try and filter the air, and the cilia help to get all the dust out of your nose, like when you sneeze. So there's also mucus there. Okay, there's mucus glands that keep mucus, and then these little cilia which wave and try and get the dust-laden mucus out, like when you sneeze. Right, and there's the nasal cavity. Okay, so it prevents that dust-laden mucus from entering your lungs. So you just breathing in air with oxygen and other gases. All right, then over here, there's the larynx. So you don't really need to know much about the larynx. It's just little cartilages that are great. We'll talk about that later. And there you can see the trachea is labeled, and the trachea is the windpipe, and I've explained the C-shaped rings of cartilage. And inside that trachea, there's also little cilia. And those cilia, they constantly move, they sweep upwards, and they push dust-laden mucus or soot-laden mucus up out of your windpipe so that it doesn't go into your lungs. Now, if you smoke, those little cilia in your nasal cavities and in your trachea and all further down, those little cilia, they actually break off. That's what the hot gases in cigarette smoke does to you. They can be gross. If you stop smoking, people often say that they can smell better and they don't have that little horrible mucusy cough, and that's because their little cilia are growing again and helping to get the dust-laden mucus and all the other impurities up out of the lungs. All right, so that's trachea. Then over here, the two bronchi. So bronchi is plural, bronchus is singular. So they are the two bronchi dividing one into each lung. They branch, sorry, I've left this here. They branch into each lung, and then they become lots and lots of smaller branches. And those smaller branches are called bronchioles or bronchioli. So they branch even more, and ultimately at the end of those are tiny little air sacs or alveoli, and that's where gases exchange occurs. Okay, so we'll have a look at that in the next lesson. So it's trachea first, then bronchi, or one bronchus to each lung, and then lots of bronchioles inside the lungs. And if you look here, I've just said they're tiny air tubes, they reach the air sacs or alveoli in the lungs, and they're muscular, okay? So they are able to expand and inflate. So people who are asthmatic, those muscles in the walls of the bronchioles, they go into spasm, and then they can't get enough air, and if you give them an inhaler like Ventolin or whatever they're using, then those muscles relax, and now more air can pass through those bronchioles to the air sacs. All right, and okay, as I said, there's tiny little air sacs at the end of those bronchioles, and we're going to talk about that in the next lesson. Just one thing from the video that I'm going to upload. It's a very nice video, except they talk about the lungs contracting. No, your lungs are not made of muscle. They're made up of lots of air sacs and lots of blood capillaries, because there's gases exchange between the air sacs and the blood capillaries. The lungs do not contract. Okay, we say when you inhale, the lungs are going to inflate, they fill up with air, and then when you exhale and your rib cage pushes against them, they deflate. We do not say the lungs contract. Okay, they're not muscle. The lungs fill up with air, they inflate, and then when you breathe out, the lungs get squeezed and they deflate. Okay, they do not contract. They're not made of muscle. And there's something about the diaphragm at the bottom. So as I said, it's a dome-shaped structure, but it's actually a ring of muscle with connective tissue, like a trampoline with dome shape. All right, so when it contracts, the dome shape becomes flattened. When it relaxes, the dome shape, or that connective tissue becomes dome-shaped again, and then it helps to force air out of your lungs. All right, and this just to show you here, so the inside your nasal cavity, there's lots of cells, tissues lining the nasal cavity, and these are the cells. You'll learn about them in grade 10, and these little mucus secreting cells in between, so they secrete the mucus, and then the dust gets trapped. And also, while the air is passing through your nose, there's lots of blood capillaries, and they help to warm that air before it goes into your lungs. You know, think of a cold winter morning. If that cold air gets into your lungs, it's going to cause your core temperature, your body temperature, to go down a bit too much. So the blood in your, in capillaries in your nasal cavities help to warm the air, and the goblet cells lining secrete mucus, and the little cilia help to sweep that dust-laden mucus out of the nose, and then you get a runny nose. Or the cilia are also found in the trachea, or the bronchi, or the little branches called bronchioles. And it's all about getting that dust-laden mucus and other impurities out of your lungs. So don't smoke. And that's taken using a normal light microscope. And this photograph or micrograph is taken using an electron microscope. So there's part of one of the cells lining trachea or wherever, nasal cavity, and these are the little cilia that sweep along to help get dust-laden mucus out. Right, then over here, so looking from the side, sorry about the block that appears, but there's the nasal cavities. There's also little sensory cells. So the air that you breathe in, this is for interest, it's got chemicals from your food. We've learned about how diffusion of molecules takes place when you smell food. So those little cells, they modify nerve cells, and they pick up that stimulus of chemicals in the air that you breathe, and then it's going to stimulate the part of your brain that helps you to smell. All right, and then at the back here, we just said pharynx, but the nasal cavity joins with the pharynx. Okay, and then here, this is from the front. This diagram here is from the front, so looking in. So you can see these are all that's your nasal cavity, and all these big holes here, those are the sinuses. So that's what becomes blocked up when you get a cold. All right, and there is your larynx. There's the trachea, there's the top of the larynx, and there's lots of cartilages and things, and we don't have to know about that. And if you look down, where's my tissue? Okay, there's my trachea. So the larynx is at the top here, and the air has to pass through. So if you look down the trachea, there's the vocal cords. So the vocal cords, they move apart and together like that. So there you can see they are apart, okay, and then they are moving together. So that's what happens when you speak. The air is passing through those cartilages, and the cartilages are forced to move, and that creates sound. Now this funny big thing over here, that's actually the epiglottis. It's going to close off the top of the trachea when you swallow food, because you don't want the food to go down the trachea. So that epiglottis closes off the trachea when you swallow food. And there's just another diagram to show these are all the sinuses in your skull, right? And our air canals are also, at least your nasal cavities, are connected to your ear. So that's why if you get an infection in your throat over here, then that infection could end up in your ears, because there's a tube from each ear connecting to your throat. You might start off with a sore throat, and then it goes up, they call the eustachian tube, and into your middle ear, and then your ears feel sore. And another question that I always get asked, why when I cry does my nose run? Well, that's because your eyes, these little tear glands, and they produce tears, and they run across your eye and into these little tear ducts over here, and those ducts drain into your nose. So when you cry, your nose runs. right? And then, I can't think I've gone the wrong way. Okay, so here, there's the, at the top of the trachea, there's the larynx. So there's lots of cartilages inside, and you'll see on the lovely video. And there's even a gland across the front of your trachea, and that's called the thyroid gland. And you learn about what that does in grade 12. Okay, next time I will take this off when I annotate. All right. Okay, so let's just see here now. All right, so one more slide. So there's from the side. So you can't breathe air and swallow food at the same time. That just doesn't happen. But you can breathe air through mouth and nose down into the trachea. But when you swallow food, it goes down the esophagus. And how does that happen? It's because this epiglottis here is going to move down and cover the glottis opening so that the food bolus that you're swallowing goes down the esophagus. But when you breathe, the air goes down into your trachea. So there you can see, there's the food bolus that the person is swallowing. There the epiglottis is covering the glottis, the opening to the trachea. The epiglottis closes glottis opening. You don't need to know glottis. It's the opening of the trachea. And now that person will not choke, and that bolus will happily go down by peristalsis and into the stomach. All right, so that's lesson 1. And in the next lesson, we're going to go on to a little bit more about the air sacs and what happens